Welcome to Fin Factor. I'm your host, Blaine Bertsch, co-founder and CEO at Driver and Cash Flow Forecasting Software, where we help the office of the CFO leave spreadsheets behind and model everything from cash flow through to complex scenarios with clarity and control. And joining me today is Jarome McKenzie of Arrowhead Strategy Group, a fractional CFO and M&A expert. Today, we'll explore sell-side strategies, best practices, and common challenges in mergers and acquisitions. Welcome to the show, Jarome.
Hey, Blaine, thank you very much for having me. Glad to be here.
So I know we've talked before, and I know that M&A is one of these things that you're an expert in on both sides, but we were going to explore sell side a little bit today. But how did you ever get into the area of M&A?
Yeah, I guess my entrance into this side of M&A was kind of unconventional. So before I started my company in March of 24, I spent 2.5, 3 years as a searcher looking for a business to buy. And funnily enough, it was my only criteria was at the time was I don't want to own an accounting or finance firm, which then fast forward 2.5, 3 years, I ended up starting one. So it just shows, for me, you think you know what you want and then you do exactly the opposite. But from the lens of a searcher, I got to analyze hundreds of different companies, especially their financials, which that's what my background is in. So that was always a fun exercise for me. And that the state of the financials of a company was like where I would decide, like, do I progress further and look into this company more, or do I cut it off? And 99% of what I looked at, I would find the bodies pretty quickly and then cut it off, move on to the next one. So I got pretty good at analyzing multiple companies, at any one time, like a week, in my spare time outside of the job that I was working at the time. And then it wasn't until the end of 2023, after my wife and I just moved back to Kansas City, where she's from where we were living in the Clearwater area in Florida, that I sat down with a family friend of my wife's family who had built, grown, and operated an HVAC company for 25 plus years. And, it was nothing huge. But it was, he had built like a pretty solid business. It was, local business. Anyone in, really in that county, in that area knew of the guy and knew of his business. And so I sat down with him at a local kind of bar and grill one afternoon. And, he was in his 60s. He told me like he wants to retire in 2-3 years. No retirement, really nothing kind of saved up and prepared for financially over the course of his life, because he had just put everything into the company and lived off the cash flow, as a lot of business owners do. And he was actually unaware that exiting and selling his company was even an option. And he thought the only option was close the doors or kind of give it to someone else to take over. And so that was something he learned kind of that day. And so then I asked him, can I see some like financials, so I can get a picture of the company? And he kind of laughed and said that, there's, I got tax returns and then I got a box of receipts, and, he's like, they're not exactly, the same thing. And I was like, okay, so, all right, no financials. So like at that point I knew, like, all right, this was not something I was going to pursue. But he was a family friend of ours and a really, really great guy. And I thought it was going to, like, I thought it'd be sad if he wasn't able to kind of cash in on what should be the most profitable, biggest, money day as for any business owner is the exit. And so I offered to help build out over the next couple of years before he, the time he wanted to retire, build out some accounting finance systems, get a structure in place so that he actually has something that he can present to show the value of what he'd spent 25 plus years building. And at that point in time, he was like, I'm too tired, don't have the energy or like to actually do his part in that. And I was going to help him for free as well, just because he's a family friend. And so at some point in time when he decides to retire, he's just going to close the doors. And this in particular for me, like, really did kind of hit hard and for me. And I thought it was really sad that someone can put years of blood, sweat, and tears into building something that does have value that he could have cashed in on, that he wasn't going to end up doing. And so that's really what sparked the idea to start my company. But I knew that going into starting my company, like, especially, M&A transaction deal work is a very lumpy thing, right? It's, you work on a deal, two deals, however many deals, and it's, this M&A advisors, like one of my best friends owns a sell side M&A firm, and there's not a consistent cash flow for companies like that. And so I started off with what I was used to, what I knew, which was, the fractional CFO, fractional controller accounting work. And then it wasn't 2 months that until that friend of mine had a deal that was not going to go to market because the sellers, also in their 60s, wanting to retire, decided that their number that they needed to exit and retire was $3 million after taxes, deal fees, everything out the door. And they were showing $500,000 of EBITDA, which, if you know anything about the valuations in the M&A world, you know that $500,000 isn't going to math into $3 million after all those things. And so that was the first deal that I kind of came on. And he just wanted me to come in, take a look at the financials, see if there was anything there. And then over the next few weeks, I did an exercise which was kind of like a version of a sell side Q of E that identifying all the things that I saw in the books that were harming their value, their presentable value, and basically converting those all in spreadsheets because for whatever reason they still really liked the regional CPA accounting firm that they were using. And then 3 weeks later, we went to market with presenting $911,000 of EBITDA, which it's 40% of value that was not being represented. And they got 4 private equity offers and exited to a private equity firm for just over $5.7 million and cleared their $3 million by a pretty big margin. And so that was the first deal that I got into in that world.
Well, and it's amazing to me because a lot of times when I hear of businesses on the sell side, and obviously I'm not exposed like you are, but what I hear is the owners go to someone that's going to help them sell, and helping them sell is you're basically going to market. And what you're saying is they're going to market completely unprepared, and they're going to lose their shirt because they don't have their finances straight. They don't have it recorded properly. And in this case, they actually had underreported their EBITDA, which is, obviously massive impact on the valuation of the company. So it sounds like this is probably seems like a very prevalent problem on the sell side here.
Yes. I mean, as a searcher, I maybe saw one set of actually clean financials that, for example, that my firm would actually ship out the door to a client. And that means that there's 200 plus companies that were not at least up to my standards of what I would be able to, as a firm, give to a client. And and especially, I think one of the I think one of the biggest things that is that when sellers decide they want to exit and they approach a broker or M&A advisor to sell their company, they're doing it saying, all right, we want to go to market now. And you know you, you can do it. But been a part of deals that was the process, because most times than not, companies that are going to market didn't prepare for 2-3 years, which is the ideal, because there's if you're the way I look at accounting and finance in a company, and for every new client that I bring on, one of the first questions I ask them is, okay, are you in growth mode or are you in exit mode? Because the accounting and finance and how that's presented should be different based on which
Yep.
mode you're in. And if you're in exit mode, then it's especially like you need to present it in the right way, because one biggest thing is, like, a lot of these companies, even if they get an offer, an LOI, and then they're starting diligence, a lot of deals go to diligence to die with bad accounting. I was talking to that M&A advisor friend of mine earlier today, and telling him I was coming on your show and what we're talking about. And he was on a phone call with his attorney, who is also specializes in M&A transactions. And he just did a presentation to a small group of people, and about the this sell side process. And one of the parts of that presentation was, what are the things that kill a deal in diligence? And accounting and finance was one of the top two things that kill deals. And like, I'm sure you've heard the saying that attorneys kill more deals than anyone in the M&A world, and I disagree, because I think accountants kill more deals than attorneys, but a lot of those aren't picked up because a lot of these deals never have a chance to even go to market to die for in the first place, because there's just a disconnect between, and because often a seller will know more about the value of their company than even if the financials don't represent that truth. But yeah, and then even just from the lens of diligence, like, speed is your friend or your enemy. And if you can go through diligence quick and easy, you're gonna have a far higher likelihood of closing. And so many deals get held up because of financials that a buyer in their diligence is just gonna not be able to really navigate what's up and what's down. And especially finding bodies after you start going diligence, because then they can retrade the deal, and then that's that's just like something you just want to avoid at all costs, because then if they offer 10 million for a company, and then they find material differences in the financials during diligence, and then they retrade it and they say, we're changing our offer to 8, the sellers at this point has got $10 million stuck in their head. And just the emotional component from a seller is, they're going to expect $10 million, even if this deal dies. That's the number they've got stuck in their head because someone put that on paper in front of them. And so avoiding that, so that you're actually going to market with a valuation that you can be confident in, is so important.
I find it like pretty fascinating that these businesses run that long and grow to oftentimes quite a substantial size or a decent size, without really having these systems and processes in place, because they have to not only just for compliance reasons, they have to report their taxes and everything every year, but from our side, we hear these stories a lot. We have businesses coming in they even have an ERP. They've kind of gone through this process and it's like, yeah, we're months behind. It's a big mess. We got to figure out plan B to get the data into dry run so we can figure out where on earth we're going. And so much so that we actually did an article recently. We were talking about basically the lost revenue, or the impact on your revenue, both from higher expenses and actually lost opportunity from not really understanding where you're going. So there's money, I think, lost all the way along by not having systems and processes in place. Um, it impacts your EBITDA and all the any sort of metric that's going to be used in the sale. And then you also get to a potential sale and you don't even have the reporting that you need. And I imagine, like you said, be ready for 2 to 3 years, because I imagine you also want a bit of a history built up of having these financial controls in place. So I'm just shocked at how, like, it has such a massive impact on businesses, how many of them just kind of move along. Why do you think it is that they actually just kind of move along with really none of this set up and in place?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I think a lot about because um, trying to really put my finger on it, and I think the biggest reason is uh, a lack of. I truly think it's a lack of education on how important this function is, and
Mm,
like that's why when I'm meeting with a new prospective client, really the biggest thing I want to find out quickly is, do you see accounting and finance as a cost or an investment? Because the ones that see it as a cost are not going to be good fit for us, because we're not the $500 a month, whatever size bookkeeping firm that's going to go and just put things in and not think about the bigger picture. Like
mhm,
the way I see it visually for me is, and I think something that a lot of accounting and finance firms and professionals have a bit of short sightedness with, is not being able to see how our function affects the company as a whole, uh, and down the line for the potential exit. And so
mhm,
it's I tr- like we really try to make sure we get outside of our little box that we sit in, accounting and finance, just the numbers, and see the big picture and how this affects other things. Because especially when we're implementing new systems, I want to say, okay, this is definitely this new process or system will be great for accounting and finance visibility. But how does this affect marketing? Does it give them the data that they need? Uh,
mhm,
how does it affect operations? Does this make, you know, uh, let's say in a manufacturing company, does this make the process of uh, ordering, putting in POs, purchasing things like inventory tracking on their side of things, does that make their job harder? And so I like to see the big picture with things like that. But I mean, and then like another like so there's education is kind of one thing, but then another is like, it's business owners are bringing in professionals in this realm because that's not their language. And
mhm,
so there's and like if like I hire an attorney, I don't I don't know anything, very little about, the actual ins and outs, the language of legal, legal talk, right?
mhm.
So I'm trusting the person I bring in to know that they know what they're talking about and they're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And part of it is I have to educate myself as much as I can too, but also, like, you're bringing in these professionals to take this function off your plate. So uh, it's that's I think a lot of it is just kind of ignorance is bliss kind of scenario. Like, they just don't know. And like an example, and this is probably the worst example I've seen to date. Uh, End of last year, I was brought on with that friend of mine to another Southside deal. They were about to go to market. A company doing just over 10 million in revenue annually, have been for the last 4 or 5 years. And they were wanting to exit. They were looking for between $15 to $20 million for their exit. Financials in the current state back then did warrant that kind of valuation. And so we're going to market, and I was brought onto the deal team. And I first time looking at the financials, I took a look and I was like, something looks off. I just feel like there's something off. And just with like a 30-minute, just kind of quick look, like my first 30 minutes of looking, I was like, okay, look, I'm not saying I'm not 100% certain about this, because I would have to dig in to be sure, but it looks like your revenue's overstated by what it looks to be, just with back of the napkin math, like $2 to $3 million.
Wow.
Over the period of 4 years.
Okay. Yeah.
So then what started is a 4-month cleanup process, because we had to go down to the transaction. There was duplicated revenue. There was duplicated expenses. It was a hot mess. There was, the balance sheet was hideous. The P&L was hideous. And at the end of the 4 months, what I had to sit down this business owner, who's actually now one of my closest friends, who started out as a stranger, but I had to sit down and tell him that I was wrong. Your revenue was not overstated by $2 to $3 million. Your net profit was overstated by $3 million, and you paid taxes on all of that. They paid taxes on $3 million
Wow.
of phantom income. That was about $750,000 that they paid on taxes for income that was not real. Luckily, we were able to, with those clean books, and because of the look back period, we were able to amend 3 years of returns. They got a nice chunk of that back.
Yeah.
Not all of it, because of it's a different story. The CPA who was doing the books and filing the taxes on one of the years there was the incorrect financials, and then the tax return didn't even match the financials. Like, there was numbers pulled out of the hat, basically. So like, we couldn't. There was nothing they could actually recoup from that. And then obviously they didn't go to market, because the true valuation of the company was more like $6 to $8 million.
Okay.
So didn't go to market. And then as soon as we ended that project of cleaning up, they'd now become one of our monthly clients. And we started, all right, let's start growth mode. Get to the point where you thought you were and beyond, so that you can exit for that 15 to 20 million.
Yeah.
And we set up some good accounting finance systems and processes. And so this started in March, I believe, that we finished the cleanup and we started actually doing the stuff that was going to move the needle. And since then, margins have increased gross margins have increased by 10 to 15%. Their highest revenue month last year. They just did a couple of months ago, where they doubled and they're just growing. The trajectory is insane. We've cut a lot of, expenses that they just weren't aware that were draining, and really hurting their bottom line. And their EBITDA for the first 6 months of this year was double last year's total EBITDA. And so if they keep on the same track that they are, even if they slowed down for the next few months left in the year, they're going to be at a EBITDA level with the current market multiples for this industry, where they're going to be able to command 18 plus million easily. And
Yeah.
diligence will be easy. Um, it'll be fast, and it'll be it'll be extremely clear to a buyer what they're buying. And it's you know a lack of financial controls is it's like, and these are all things that also um, are things that drive a multiple more towards the premium, because
Mhm.
uh, it's not just the Wild West. It's not a whole bunch of spreadsheets and manual stuff going into it. I mean,
Mhm.
what we've able to implement has been able to, like, they were able to cut a whole, uh, like, they're able to cut an entire uh, head count. They haven't, but they could, because of that person's roles now just shift into something else,
Mhm.
because uh, of all that, and yeah, it's uh it's such a neglected piece of, even if you're not exiting, um, just to be able to grow and know where you're at. Like, it's obviously the way I like, because of what we do, uh, I'm
Mhm.
able to. I have, like, our company has clean financials, so I know at any one time where we're at, and it makes decision making that much easier.
Yeah.
And I see some of these clients that come on with us, and I'm like, how? Like, it is actually amazing. Like, it is actually kind of impressive that these companies get to these levels where they're doing 10, 15 million in revenue, are profitable,
Mhm.
and have done it for years with virtually no accounting or finance system.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me because we see it on our side every day as well. And we're not hopefully we can help some people exit. We actually have before. We've actually had a couple businesses come in, get us up and running, and it did help them exit. And um But what it reminds me of is going back to what really the time that I came up with the idea for Dry Run was when, around 2008, 2009, I had a creative agency. We were growing quite quickly, and then, of course, the brakes on the economy just slammed shut. We were doing mostly government, agency work that just dried up, and so, I pulled up the spreadsheets, and they were initially just, "How are we gonna make payroll and keep everybody? And how are we gonna, meet all of our obligations?" But what happened is it started to look further and further out, and then I still remember it. I don't remember exactly what the spreadsheets looked like, but I do remember looking down at spreadsheets one day sitting on my desk, and I just remember this realization, and I remember saying, "Holy shit, I can't believe how much money I've left on the table here." And it was because from our point what I had realized at that point was, um we didn't have a good enough look at the timing of the deals coming in and the revenue coming in, which meant that we kept having capacity issues. We over capacity and paying contractors, under capacity and people sitting idle, over, under, and being able to project that and being able to project the cash flow and understand where you're deploying money and um, you can smooth that out and you can make a lot more money just from looking, just from knowing. And I think it's amazing to me how much, like you said, is it a cost center? Is it basically an opportunity that you're building? And it's one of the fundamentals of businesses when they first start need to get control of their finances and understand that. But I imagine what happens is as they grow, like where are these lines where they'll outgrow the systems they have, and I imagine that's when things start to fall off because they've outgrown the whatever system they have running.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it's, most businesses when they start, uh, they're it's probably the founder doing the bookkeeping, right? And then they're growing, and then maybe they hire a bookkeeping firm or a bookkeeper. Um, but then there seems to be some disconnect that, especially I think it's like, oh, they're like, well, we're growing, revenue's growing, uh, and we're still able to grow. So like, why would we need to change? And they're like, they're kind of just looking at from, okay, top line revenue is growing, and this expense of $500 a month is $500 a month. Like I'm winning. I get cheap
Yeah.
bookkeeping. Like this is great. Um, but I mean, I think it's, and maybe it's different for different businesses, but I mean, I would say, if you're approaching 3 million in revenue at least, and this probably is being conservative, I think it's probably before that, but if you're at, 3 million a year and you still got the bookkeeper, uh, in there, like it's the $500 a month bookkeeper that's just categorizing bank transactions, exporting a QuickBooks P&L and L and balance sheet, sending it to you, and
Mhm.
which most owners don't actually look at anything except for revenue and profit, right?
Yeah.
Top line, bottom line. Is kind of the extent of it.
Mhm.
In a lot of cases, then and it's around around that, and I think that's where you know fractional anything, I feel like, is just in the last 6 or so years has really started uh, becoming more and more popular.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of business owners look at this function and more aware of that you can hire a firm and fill multiple roles for cheaper than a full-time W-2
Mhm.
employee. But there's still a lot of companies out there that think, well, if I want CFO services, CFO, strategic analysis at all, then I'm going from $500 a month for my bookkeeper to $150,000+ salary with benefits, all that uh, kind of stuff going into it. And when realistically it's not, and it's like there's I feel like the bar is very low in accounting and finance industries, especially when it comes to accounting, right? Because like a CFO, a CFO's work is only as good as uh, the inputs from the accountant or bookkeeper that is putting the data in that
Mhm.
CFO uses to do their work with. And um, it's yeah, I don't know. I think it's the gap between the really good accounting and finance professionals and the bar is is a huge gap. So like for it's and that's where the mindset of, do you see this as a cost center or revenue center comes in, because uh I mean this has happened in so many of our engagement. Like no, I don't talk to anyone that if someone's talking to me uh thinking about coming on as a client for us, uh it's not because they have a great accounting and finance system currently. And oftentimes, unfortunately, it seems like the only way to make that change right now, like at least for the majority, is through a painful experience and learning from that. Hopefully the first time,
Yeah.
sometimes two or three editions of that. Um,
Yeah.
and then it's super eye opening. So like for example, um, we had just a couple of months ago a e-commerce client of ours doing 10 million in revenue a year. Uh, when they came on, the sales tax, they had reached Nexus in 30 something states. And there was one of the first things see on the balance sheet is there's all these state, there's a there's a sales tax account on the balance sheet for each state, and 95% of them have negative balances. And so then it's like, all right, look back, and we ended up amending maybe 8 or so sales tax returns from the beginning of 2024 for 3 different states. And a month later, they got $42,000 in 3 different checks from each of those states in the mail because they had overpaid because their systems were incorrectly reporting that, like, they were not collecting on like they just things as simple. And actually, from the last episode that I saw up there, the evolving role of a CFO, and I quite like the COFO,
Yeah.
because it's truly it truly does encompass a lot of that. Like, it's the way that basically their Shopify account was set up. They had half of their products marked as exempt, which,
Mm.
but then in their sales tax portal, the products were marked as non-exempt. So they were not collecting, and then they were paying on those products, and to the tune of $42,000 just
Wow.
beginning of last year. And so, and that's we find ourselves in that kind of scenario often. Like, a new client comes on for us, and within the first month or two, there's often some kind of opportunity or saving, or we, we've really gone into the business this year, especially the last few months, of identifying opportunities for tax return amendments. So we've had helped clients amend 23 and 24 returns maybe 4 or 5 times this year, and they've gotten money back each time. And but it's things like that are,
It feels like, we see this all the time. It feels like it's always reactionary when people will take notice of this and say, we need some help, need some systems in place. It really makes it a challenge, right? And I think the other thing is, when it's reactionary, it's just like, who's closest at hand. So it's not hire slow, it's not hire right. It's hire fast, whoever's there. And I think what happens is, family, friend, or whatever, and then it starts to go down these paths, and then eventually, again, they're reacting again and again and again, and then they'll find someone like you to go, okay, can you come in and clean this entire mess up that we built up over the last 10 years? And it's, it hurts the business for that entire time, and then it has a real drain on them when they're trying to exit. So it's, yeah, I think what you guys are doing is really amazing, and it's also just highlighting how important it is to have these controls and systems and processes in place right from the start. Get them moving at any point in time. But like you said, if you are looking at an exit, it's 2-3 years. Make sure give yourself some time.
Yeah, I mean, that's the ideal world. That's gonna be like, that's going to make you more money in your exit if you do that. And that's the other thing. It's like, if you are, like, say, in that scenario, say a client comes to us and they say, all right, like, we need our systems set up and processes set up and in place right now to operate and grow, but in 2-3 years we want to exit. So there's justification, especially the closer you get to that date. That, especially, like, if you're going to exit, a lot of the cost that that they're paying for us is an add back. which, and add backs is, that's probably, and I had that written down as one of the red flags is like, there's a lot of companies that have a list this long of add backs, and a lot of them are so immaterial, and just like human psychology is a, is something that's super interesting to me, and like behavior, and uh, it's, you want to have your ad backs in there that are justified and material and actually make an impact. But you, like, in my opinion, right? If you have more than 4 or 5 lines uh, of adjustments and ad backs, that's when a buyer psychologically, from like what I see like, all right, and they're like, all right, and now they're going to be like, well, all right, well, I'm just going to throw out half of these, just like, it's like the perception that you're getting greedy with it, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And so, like, for every deal that I'm a part of, I'm like, look, let's find the 4 or 5 biggest impact ad backs. The $1,000 here, the $2,000 here, in the grand scheme of things, when the top 4 or 5 make up 95+%, you know,
Mm. Yeah.
those are just, they're actually going to be counterproductive, because then they're going to,
Yeah.
like, buyers are a lot more willing to look at 4 or 5 that are justifiable, that there's support and backup to, like, say, like, like, this is what these are. This is how we got these numbers. They're justified. And
Mhm.
like, when we went through uh, the diligence for that first one I worked on, I mean, when you're getting 4 private equity offers, and I'm the one talking to these PE firms that have diligence teams that
Mhm.
all they do is deals. I was very curious, because when I did my work with this, it made sense to me, uh, and it was, I could justify it, but I also had some like intrinsic bias to
Mhm.
it. So I was very curious to see how these conversations would go, especially when the adjustments take you from 500,000 to 911,000. Like, that's not
Yeah.
small change. Um, and so, on each of these calls, uh, the the person leading the financial diligence for the PE firms, would ask questions about each one, and there was 4 or 5 of them, and I would, explain how I got to this number, explain, like, the conversion from what the book showed to how we got to here, and on all 4 of those conversations, for each one of those, there was not a single, "Oh, I don't know about that," or, like, it was just like, "Okay, cool, and on to the next one."
Yeah.
And I think if we had have included more, then there would have been kick.
Starts to get starts to get a little you start getting pushback. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the adjustments which made up half of that gap to 500,000 to 900, uh, was was kinda like was was kinda like, I thought there could be some kickback on that, just because, like, basically, it was, they had been categorizing as cost of goods sold something that was actually a fixed asset that should have been depreciated over 10 years. Like, there was
Mm.
there was a useful life of that of 10 years. The warranties were 10 years, and ownership never changed uh, hands. So, as well, for these items, they always remained. And so, like, they were expensing them as they purchased them. And, and this is, something that costs less than $100 per item, but there were thousands being
Mm.
purchased all
Yeah.
throughout the year. So there was negative COGS somewhat, because what a regional CPA and accounting firm was doing was taking a physical inventory count of these, and looking at the uh, the balance sheet, and making an entry just to get the balance sheet to reflect the physical inventory count, which caused negative COGS in given months throughout the year, which, as you know, is not possible, right? Um,
Mhm.
and so that was a pretty like out there one, kind of to like say, hey, these actually should be depreciated. Here's the depreciation expense for these, but this should be spread out over 10 years. Uh,
Yeah.
but there was no kickback, and it went smoothly.
Yeah. So I know we're coming up on our time here. I could probably talk for another 2 hours about this, but this was really interesting, Jerome, and I think you highlighted not just not just the sell side getting prepped for that, but just being prepped and running your business and actually being able to generate more income, reduce your costs right from the start, and it will have a greater impact as well down the road when you're looking to sell your business. How should people get hold of you if they want to talk with you about any of your services?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Jarome McKenzie, and it's JA. And then also I'm on X, Twitter, at Jerome the CFO. And then, or you could go to our website, which is arrowheadstrategygroup.com.
All right, terrific. Yeah.
And some people might find some of our company golf balls scattered around different golf courses around the country.
Yeah.
I'll say that they were left there intentionally, but they're just bad tee shots that went way off the fairway, and they've got a QR code on them, which take you to all of our links. But
Just you might as well take a few balls and every time you put it in the bush, you can say, "How is this marketing?" So marketing expense.
yeah,
Well, thanks so much, Jerome. I really appreciate your time. This was a really good conversation.
yeah, thank you very much, man. Appreciate it.
And for those of you out there, if you are a CFO or you're on a finance team and you are in spreadsheets to do your cash flow or to understand where your revenue is going, compare scenarios, come talk with us at dryrun.com. We will save you a ton of time. We're going to make you some of that money by reducing your costs, showing you where you're bleeding money, finding those opportunities. We'll also make you money. And so we're going to give you a really good ROI. So come talk with us at Dryrun. Thanks so much.